Hello, welcome to the February 3rd, 2023 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test to make sure everything is coming through okay. And then we will begin, if you could bear with me just for a moment. Hello, welcome to the All right, everything sounds fine on my monitoring computer. Hang on. Just to do a quick audio test to make sure everything is coming through okay. And then we will begin, if you could bear with me just for a moment. All right, just everything sounds fine on my monitoring computer. Hang on. Kind of hearing it twice here. Let me just see if I have it in a different. All right. Okay, so my name is Greg Undo, and I am the host of the live stream. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can submit questions in the live chat field or submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Artist, Elements, or Pro, which version numbers, if it's 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, and if you're running a Mac or Windows, that would be helpful. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in real time will soon be eclipsed. And I will try my best throughout the live stream to catch up and get through all the questions. So if you don't get an immediate response to your question, if we could try to refrain from asking the same question repeatedly, that just kind of slows down the whole process, that would be appreciated. And we should have all the topics that are discussed in today's live stream indexed with timestamps and pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream. I'll take a quick dinner break, and then I will go through and create the index so you could use as a reference to go to different particular topics that you may want to see. If you wanted to search for topics on other live streams that we've done in the past, and we're almost approaching 3 years next month, and so just like 6 weeks from today, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan in Stockholm for creating that wonderful website that is a great resource. So you could search through over, I think, 24,000 topics that we've done. We also want to thank Agent K and Jazz Dude, who serve as moderators. I see that Agent K, I think, is not able to attend live, so we want to, they're not Steinberg employees. They just kind of do this out of the kindness of their heart. So we want to give a special thanks to them to make it a better community. And another wonderful resource of information that's available to the Steinberg community is the Cubase Nation Discord, which Jazz Dude does a lot of work on. So we'll give him another special thanks for all of his efforts with that and for everything that he does in the live stream and helping people. And again, my name is Greg Undo. I work as basically a product specialist focusing on Steinberg products for Yamaha Corporation of America, which is the United States distributor. And I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in the United States and in Alexandria, Virginia. So if you're watching live or if you're watching afterwards, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. So with that, we will go ahead and begin. I'm going to pop my chat out to a different page. Okay, so I think we missed, sometimes when I pop chat out, it doesn't carry over, but let me just go. I think we still have it. I think I copied it beforehand. Just in case it didn't carry over. Okay, so we have a question I see from Ace Amadeus. Hi, Greg. Hope you're well. Could you please explain how to use MIDI Learn in Cubase 12 and how to load and use expression maps? Thanks. All right, so a lot of times when we're doing like a particular instrument, and this could be dependent on the design of the instrument, but let's say if I wanted to look at Retrolog here, and I wanted to control a particular parameter from like a keyboard slider. So let's say I'm going to right click on a parameter and say learn CC, and then I could just move the controller on and move the CC, and I could just come directly over here and control different parameters of plugins just like that. Now, another thing you could do if you have a MIDI controller is you could configure part of the MIDI remote to function as an AI knob. And then if you wanted to, and we could do this in the MIDI remote. So if I say, okay, I want a particular fader or knob or button on my controller here to, and I'll just go to different. So I can say, I want this knob directly here. So I'm going to just come over here. I'll select that knob, and then we could go to mouse pointer AI knob, and then we could just say works as mouse pointer. So now when I apply the mapping, most parameters that I hover over now will automatically be controlled based on just moving that one particular knob. So if I go into the EQ, I could turn on a value. I could adjust the parameters just by moving one particular knob. So that's another way that you could do MIDI learn. So instead of learning every single parameter, maybe just learn one parameter and hover, and then you're able to control. All right, so you see, question, Greg, what are the other alternative things I could do if I don't want mid-side EQ on pre-live? You said no need to mid-side EQ every time when I should mid-side channel EQ, not how to decide. Okay, so let's say if you had, maybe a particular, let's see if I can find, maybe this drum loop might be a good case. All right, so let's say if I want to take this drum loop here, and let's say we had something that was kind of panned out, and I'll create just a quick, for demonstration purposes here. So I will just put in a couple. So let's say I want a snare. Okay, so let's say I was just playing. Okay, so let's say in this kit, I wanted, let's say, my bongos to be panned. So I'm going to take my two bongos and pan them kind of hard left and hard right. So now if I wanted to do EQ, in this case where we have the snare going directly into the center, but my bongos and percussion are kind of panned hard left and right, and I wanted to apply, so let's say we had this situation, and now when I go over to my audio channel, and let's just add our frequency EQ. So now I'll turn this on, and let's put it into mid-side. So I want to just adjust the mid-range. That at that point we could just kind of EQ only the middle part, or we could adjust the sides. So let's say we just used the right band of EQ here. So I'm going to turn this on. All right, so now we see the mid. So now we could only pan, we could pan or EQ independently the different mid and side. So if I want to just, so that's like in a case where you'd want to use like a typical mid-side EQ. Again, only kind of panning within the center part of the panning spectrum. Okay, let me see if I have my chat field, if we're kind of caught up with this stuff. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. I have multiple events on the same track. Is there a function or macro to place all selected events on an own track? So depending, it's hard to do a macro depending on how many particular tracks you have. You may have to kind of change it per the number of tracks. But one thing you could do is, like, as tracks are imported, if you have this, we could say, okay, when we go to import audio files, if we have like multiple files here, we'll get asked, if we want to incorporate these onto different tracks or one track. So you could choose different tracks if you wanted to. I guess another way that we could do this, let's see if this would work. So if I have, let's say, a marker track, all right. So, and let's say I wanted to insert a cycle marker on every one of these events, and you can make a macro to do this. So all right, so let's say, and now, so we'll come here, we'll just do macro. All right, so let's say, now I have each of these events kind of broken into different cycle markers. So what we could do at this point, now that we have the events defined by markers, we could do, let's say, an export audio mixdown. And we could, at this point, choose cycle markers. And we say, okay, I wanted to import like my 4 cycle markers here. And we will create an audio track. So we'll add this to our queue. And then we'll say start export. So now everything that was on one particular track can now be exported to different tracks on the marker, just kind of like that. So you could do a cycle marker export, might be an option. So let me know. All right, so we see Greg, question on frequency 2, their sidechain panel. I see levels and pre-fader options. What's that for? Can you explain how it works, and how should I use that? So when you go into like the frequency, let's say the frequency plugin. So we'll go ahead and just go to the particular frequency channel here. And now that we activate the sidechain, so say, okay, I want this to function as my sidechain. So you could just set your different levels here. And let me just make sure it's the right area. Okay, and let's say when we go to our dynamics area, I'll just switch this over. Okay, so activate this. So we could just come over here. So what that is going to allow you to do is, you could have it pre-fader where the fader of the track that's feeding the sidechain doesn't have any impact on the signal going in. So if I had that coming from a different track as my sidechain input. And then let's say, this was my track that the sidechain input was coming from. And then if we had the fader, that, this fader is not going to affect the particular sidechain. So whether you want that to or not, that's when you could adjust the pre-fader. So that's kind of so that's kind of what the pre-fader options are. So if you want this to feed, if you need to feed more signal into the sidechain using the fader, or if you don't want that to be a factor at all, that's when you could set up that particular, the pre-fader options in the EQ, in the frequency. So we see, hi Greg, will clap the new plugin format be supported by Cubase? So I'm not sure if there's anything really that's in clap that's not available in VST3. When I haven't researched it recently, but when I saw all the new things that clap could do, it just seems like all the capabilities are already in VST3. So I wouldn't anticipate supporting clap, and I don't think there's a lot of plugins that are doing it. Maybe only maybe one or two companies, as there's probably over 100,000 VST3 plugins, so I think the momentum would stay there. So I wouldn't anticipate it, and I don't think there's any unique aspects that I've seen that can't already be set up in VST3. Even though some developers may not implement those features, the capabilities are already existing within VST3. All right, so a question. On a MIDI logical editor, I see 3 different kinds of brackets, kind of 1, 2, and 3. Can you explain each one of them and its uses and what it does and when should I use them? So if we have like different brackets, this is for defining kind of different groups of conditions. So let's say if we go into our logical editor and we'll go to our setup. So let's say I want to select notes. So let's say we'll say, okay, I wanted to select a note whose pitch was, let's say C3, and the velocity was inside the range of 80 to 127. Okay, so let's say I wanted to select that as a condition, but let's say I wanted to set up kind of a different condition. So here we can say, okay, now I want to say I wanted to select types are equal to notes, and their pitch is, let's say value 1, their pitch is equal to C4, and their velocity range, we'll say value 2, the velocity range is inside range 60 to 80. So here, I can't necessarily select, velocity ranges of, this would select a velocity range of 80 to 127 and 60 to 80 on these particular things. But let's say I wanted to kind of break these apart to separate them. So we'll just say now I will choose 2 brackets so that we could come over here and let's set up our Boolean condition. So, and we could say now I wanted to select notes that were C3 between 80 and 127, or notes that are C4 between 60 and 80. So we could kind of break these into different grouped elements that can function together with the Boolean condition there. So we could have up to 3 different groups within one logical editor preset. So instead of using 3 logical editor presets maybe to do a complex edit, we can use 1 and do 3 independent functions. So let me know if that makes sense. We see Patrick is kind of traveling today. Thanks for joining us. All right, we see Benny from Sweden. Thanks for joining us. All right, we have Uno Memento from Finland. It's -5 degrees centigrade and 30 centimeters of snow. All right. All right, so we have Vincent Simpkins saying hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. All right, and we have David Griffith checking in from Wales, UK, and Soren from Sweden. It's Sir N68. All right, we see Jan from Cubase Index from Stockholm. All right, Uno Memento reminds everyone when you log in, remember to press the like button. So that's always good. That enables us to continue to do these live streams. All right, and we see Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. All right, and Peter checking in from Montreal, where it's a crisp minus 40 degrees centigrade with a wind chill. So it's a good day to stay inside and watch a Club Cubase live stream. Yeah, I was watching kind of the Arctic blast in Northeast America, and I'm sure it didn't stop in Montreal, but stay warm. All right, Matt Elliston joining us. All right, and we have Larry checking in from Brampton, Ontario, Canada. Thanks for joining us. Filter Freak is on. Captain Energy Music from Pennsylvania. Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo, California, where he says Cubase is king. All right. All right, you see from Jan from Cubase Index is thanks for Tuesday's Zoom meeting for invited famous producer Michael Wagner, special guest. It was amazing. Yeah, so it was wonderful to see Michael kind of share his, his industry insights and anecdotes and approaches to things. So, yeah, it was, it was so wonderful of Michael to share information and spend time with us. And he hasn't done anything like that since he retired. And, so he was a little nervous because, but it was so wonderful to have him share his knowledge. All right, we see Michael Pierce also saying that Tuesday's Zoom was great. All right. All right, so you just see from, I'm not sure if this is directed to me, but Vincent Simpkins just asks, what is the website again? So if you could let me know if there's a particular website that you're looking for, if you could remind me, I could probably direct you to it. All right, so we see a question from Michael Pierce. In a project, if I need to change the start point from 00000 to 1 hour as a start point, what's the easiest way to do this? Thank you. All right, so let's say my time code is here, and I'll just open up my large format display. So let's come over here, and we'll go to our time display. So we see that we're currently at 000. All right, and let's say we want this to be starting at 1 hour. So I think if you just go to project and go to set time code at cursor, we could say, like, just come right over here and just say, okay, I want 01. So we'll do 1 hour. Okay, let me just. I guess we just making sure I'm in. So now we'll just come over here and set time code at cursor. And it'll ask you, you've modified the events. Do you want to keep the project content at its time code position? Probably choose no. And now as we play, we'll just start exactly at 1 hour. So just go to, Michael, just go to your project menu and set time code at cursor. And we'll just choose 1 hour. So I will just come right over here. So now as we play, everything is starting at 1 hour exactly. So give that a try. Let me know if that works for you, Michael Pierce. It's great to see you on the live stream and the Zoom meetup on Tuesday. All right, sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. All right. I think I'm back. All right, so we have a question from Ed Visinor. So it's Cubase 12 Pro. Why, when I quantize, does it sometimes move in like tiny portions? I have to press Q many times to get it to line up. What setting can I change? All right, so let's say we have like a drum kit here. And let's say I have a couple of drum sounds. And let's say I wanted to quantize these. I'm going to just quickly move these so that they're slightly off. So bear with me just for a second. All right, so we'll transform our notes, and then what we want to do is position. Okay, so now we have notes that are kind of a bit off rhythmically and not necessarily on the grid. All right, so when we do quantizing, so let's say, I'll just kind of move this. I'll move some of these notes just a little more off. Okay, so let's say I wanted to quantize, this particular note to this beat. Now, if you go to the quantize panel, so let's say we'll just come right over here, and one of the things is an iterative quantize. So if I selected this particular note and I say, okay, we want to quantize it to quarter notes, and we have our percentage, the iterative mode here, and that is set to 90%. So let me just move this over here, and we'll say our line is the beat. So when I quantize, it quantizes it 90% closer to the beat without ever actually getting to the beat. So that way, that's kind of what people often call like a soft quantize. So if you have iterative quantize, maybe just turn that off in the quantize settings. And also make sure that your quantized value is set where you expect it to. So, maybe if you have it set for, a 64th dotted note or a groove quantize that was copied in, but if we just select all these notes here, I'll just select all and I say, okay, I want it to be quarter notes, and I hit quantize, they'll all quantize to quarter notes. Just move this out of the way. So where we were, and if I say let's move them all to eighth notes, they'll all kind of move. So make sure you don't have iterative and that you have kind of the expected quantized value, and then you could just say, okay, there it's 16th notes, or if you wanted to add a swing, you could just come over there and add swings to it as well. But if you don't have the iterative mode enabled, and and then you have just your value set here to like 8th or 16th, which is pretty typical, then at that point it should be like a hard quantize right on the beat. So check those things. Great. So Vincent Simpkins is checking it from North Carolina. All right. We have Gerald Ely says, hello, Greg. Are there any problems running Cubase on a Mac that is run from external boot disk? So I wouldn't anticipate any problems unless it's like a super slow disk, but I think that you would be fine. If you could run other programs from the same boot disk, then you shouldn't have any problems, Gerald. All right. So we see Thermonuclear War. Great to see you on the live stream checking in from Serbia. Thanks for being here. All right, so we have a question. I have many groups. How can I route them to another one group except one audio track? Okay, so let me just jump to different project here. Okay, so let's say at this point I want it to just open. Okay, so let's say I have a drum group. All right, so I'm just going to come here. And let's say a bass group. And a guitar group. Okay, so we'll just come over here, add a group channel to the selected. Okay, so then all you would have to do is to select the groups. So I'm going to hold down Control or Command, select my 3 groups, and then let's send that group channel. So now as we play, I go to my bass group, we solo it. Let's go to my drum group. Let's go to my guitar group. But now all these groups are being fed into this group. So you could have nested groups. And then if you have another audio track, that group, that could be just going to the master output. So just select the groups and you can have a group going to a group, going to a group, going to a group. And there's no consequences of delay compensation because it's automatically compensated for. So just route your groups to a new group and then you should be all set. All right, so we see John Costigan checking in from Kenosha, Wisconsin. So yeah, sorry that you missed the Zoom meetup, and glad hopefully you got it sorted out so you could be on the next one. I saw you kind of came in right at the very end, John. Sorry you missed the time with Michael Wagner, but glad hopefully you won't have problems in the future on getting on the end of the month live stream in February. All right, so we have a question from Thomas from Sundsvall, Sweden. Can I get the cursor to locate when I click on an event on a track? It works if I click on an empty track. So there is a setting where if you hold down, I think it's Alt plus Shift. So there's a setting, a preference where you could click on an empty spot and the cursor will navigate there. Now, clicking on an event selects the event. So if you don't want to do that, hold down Alt or Option plus Shift, and then you could just click wherever and move the playhead to wherever you want. So Alt or Option plus the Shift key and click anywhere in the project, and that will allow you to navigate freely. All right, so we have a question. Music was recorded, violin 48K via Midi takes. Is it okay if I will bounce it as one track as mono track at 44.1K, or do I need to convert takes in media pool first? So what I would do is if you had like a whole bunch of takes, like a comp, I would, take the different performances here and I would from the audio menu, just do a bounce selection and then export that particular file and then go into your pool. So we'll go over here to our media menu, to our pool window, and then we can say, okay, this is our new file, and then we could right click to convert sample rate. So we could convert the files and just come right over here and convert the sample rate directly there. So in that way, you could always go back. You have your original underlying files at the original resolution, and then you could just simply at that point have a separate distinct file and do the sample rate conversion on that. All right, so we see, hi Greg, rotary encoders, do they work with the MIDI remote app? So yeah, so as soon as you come over here, so if if I go to my MIDI remote here, I'll have my rotary encoders. So you could just have that automatically mapped so they work just as well. So whether they stop or they are continuous, it's no problem. And then once we go into like the mapping assistant for a particular knob, here you could, set, what particular, functions and the mapping configuration. So if you want it to be scaled or fixed, so there's different options here for mapping configurations, but the rotary encoders definitely work. And then like as you would set up a new, a new device here. So let's say if I was setting up, I'll just create one for my choice OS controller. It's my favorite little MIDI fader unit. So we'll say, okay, let's come over here, go to my choice OS 100, MIDI in and out ports. So even though this is kind of faders, I could set up, encoders. We could have push encoders. We could have joysticks, lamps if you wanted to. So here we could kind of pick the object. So whatever just transmits MIDI info. So this way we could just come over there and add all of our faders for our choice OS controller. So if it's an encoder, anything that just transmits MIDI will work. All right, so a question. How do you group link all channels in the lower to lower overall volume whilst the volume automation to change as well? I've tried this, but the automation remains the same. Okay, so what you could do is, I'll just revert this. This is when like a VCA is really good, so. All right, so I'm gonna just quickly come over here and write in some kind of fake automation. So we have automation. Okay, so I'm gonna turn on Q-Link. All right, so say we have automation. Okay, so what we could do is assign these particular tracks. And I'm going to assign them. So I'll hold down, I'll select the first one, and we could just select the track in the mixer by clicking in the fader. And what I want to do now is to right click and we'll add a VCA fader to the selected tracks. So now if I wanted to adjust my automation on the VCA fader, I'll just come here and we can see that while my tracks are going or automating, I could just bring them all up or down, even going in opposite directions. And now that I've done this, let's just look at one particular channel. So we can see the original automation, and then we have what is the result of the VCA. So my original automation is down, but my VCA could bring up all the different tracks up and down. And even if they're kind of going in contrary motions, let's say if we have this track and let's say my automation was just laid out for me like this, so we could see the VCA. So if I wanted to combine the effect of the VCA, the changes of the VCA fader to the tracks, we go to the VCA fader here, and we'll just say, you'll see a little arrow that points down just to the right of the link. And at this point, you can say combine automation of VCA with the linked channels. And then that would show you the result of the VCA. You don't necessarily have to do that. It'll still automate and play back fine. But if you wanted to make that nice and clean so that the VCA automation was covering and including, and you see the immediate effect of the VCA on the automation, you could just combine. So select all the tracks that have their existing automation and just send it to a VCA. So again, right click, add VCA to selected tracks and adjust that VCA and automate that. All right, John Costigan wants people to hit the like button. Don't forget the like button. That management loves it. All right. All right, so we see question from Benny. Hey, Greg, can you show me how you use hit points on a bass track and use quantize? Have some problems with that. Thanks, Cubase 12 Pro. All right, so let's go look at our bass tracks. Let me just come over. I'll just hide all my automation. Okay, so let's say we want to take my bass part here, and I just want to, so let's say we're going to look and we'll just kind of like maybe look at our hit points. So these look fairly reasonable. So when we want to quantize, so let's say I want to quantize this to quarter notes. And when you quantize audio, make sure that you have kind of the audio warp activated. And now when you hit Q, you can just quantize the track. So if this audio warp isn't turned on and you hit Q, it's not going to necessarily work as well. But all you have to do now is just come over here, and while it's playing, and let me just bring the fader up. So now that audio warp is on, so make sure that, when you have it selected, as you record audio in, Cubase will automatically detect the hit points unless you specifically turn it off as a preference. But when you do your normal quantize, just make sure that the audio warp is active, and that allows you the audio to be moved around and quantized based on the hit points. All right, so Thermonuclear War says like for best DAW. All right. All right, so we have from Cubase X, bonsoir, Greg. Sorry, I never studied French, unfortunately. Thank you for these hangouts. So you're welcome. Glad to be able to help people create music and get their work done faster and kind of unleash a little bit of creativity. All right, so we see Nick is saying hey to the Cubase family. All right, so we see from Soren, need to come to grips with parallel compression. Watch videos about it later, but can you ease me into it and show something? Dom S, I guess Dom Segalis, speaks about using Sens pre-fader. So what I like to do, and you could use Sens if you wanted to, and pre-fader will make sure that it won't necessarily, like the fader won't necessarily have an impact, especially if you have automation on it. But, there's simple ways of doing this. So let me just come over here. So let's say, okay, I want to take my drum. So, we need to kind of create two different paths, and these will be kind of a parallel path. So if I wanted to take my drums here, And let's say, okay, so we want to send our drums to two different sources. One is going to be heavily compressed, and one is going to be kind of unaffected. And then, what you want to have is the original dynamics, the loud parts and the soft parts kind of retained in the unaffected part, and blend that with something that's kind of squashed sounding. So I'm going to take, I'll just go to my drums, and I'm going to add 2 group tracks. Okay, so we'll say, okay, now I just want to come over here. We'll add 2 groups. Okay, so we have our 2 groups. So, and we could come over here and set up sends to do this. If you're using like the large mixer, I like to use, just to keep it nice and clean, is direct routing. So what I could do now is I want to take, and we go to direct routing, there's a little secret button here. You want to have direct routing summing mode enabled and checked. So you can just go to the left of the word racks and make sure that that's turned on. So my direct routing, I'm going to now come over here. We'll select these tracks, and I want to enable my Q link. So Alt or Option plus Shift, and I'm going to send it to Group 1, and then I'm going to send it to Group 2. And so let's just come over here. Let me just make sure these are all selected. Sorry, I didn't select those. If I hold down to press the right key, we could do this. All right, so now Q-Link is active. Now it's all going to Group 1, and now it's all going to Group 2. So now we play our drums. And our drums, as they come in, you'll see the drums be duplicated into Group 1, and we'll just call this drums dry and squashed. All right, so we'll come here, make sure that, so we're getting our drums to our 2 different sources here. So I'm going to go into this channel. Let's go to the channel strip. We're running a plugin, and I want to all right, so now we'll solo just our drums. So we have our normal group. So that's unaffected. And let's say if I want to come here and just kind of bring this in. So we could have kind of that balance where this is retaining kind of the dynamics of it, and this just kind of gives it a little more extra oomph. So if we mute this, especially here on kick and snare, turn it back on. So you kind of have the best of both worlds with that. Now you could send to multiple groups via sends if you want to, or just direct outputs are a great source of being able to do that as well. So let me know if that helps, Soren. All right, so we see PZ136, just wishing everyone a happy Friday. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, so Thermonuclear War says he's drunk. That's good. All right. So we see, hi Greg and everyone, since Cubase has only 8 sends and I have 21 stems, is it possible to use group tracks? Has a chain that will allow me to add more sends through them for sidechaining limiting for all stems? Thank you. So yeah, you definitely, if you run out of send it to a group, you have 8 more. Send it to another group, you have 8 more. Send it to another group, you have 8 more. So no problems doing that. Noah. All right, so we have from Mike Weiser, question, Cubase 12 Pro, is there a function or a preference to change the reset level on a fader other than 0 dB, like defaulting to minus 8.3 instead? So there is a default setting for the send levels. So let's come over here to VST, so you can say the default send level. We have it set to -6, so we could have it set to -6, -12, or 0 dB. So that way you could, so maybe just set that to -6 instead of 0 dB if that's what it's set to. But check out again preferences to VST, and then you have different choices for default send level. All right. So we see from Noah, also the question for Tuesday, check the Microsoft software to analyze the Cubase crash dump file, but I don't understand how to read it. Can you please give an example on how to read it? So I haven't tried that particular utility yet. Oftentimes I'm not a software developer. I'm not that smart of a person. But at times I don't, a lot of that is more kind of software developer oriented, but you might be able to get clues. But if you have a particular crash dump, I'd be happy to take a look at it, but you could always send it to Steinberg as part of a support request form and see what is causing the crash. But I haven't tried that particular utility. I just saw a lot of people use that for doing analysis on crash dumps. But if you want to email me your crash dump, I'd be happy to take a look at it. I may not understand it any more than you do, Noah, but you could send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we see Filter Freak. Where is the preference for notifying you of sample attribute changes from drag and drop media? So if you so probably what you want to do is if you're dragging and dropping media in and it needs to be converted to a different sample rate, go to your preferences and go to editing, to audio, and it says on import audio files. You can have it automatically set to use settings. You could automatically copy all the files to the project folder. You can have it automatically convert to project settings. That includes bit depth and sample rate. If needed, and you could choose to split channels, but you could also have it open the open options dialog, and that will just kind of ask you, do you want to copy it to the project folder? Do you want to convert it? So it's one of those windows that as you do it once, it's when you have the option to click here to not see this window again, and a lot of people do that and then can't find it. So what you want to do, but this is the area. So editing to audio and on import audio files, you could have it automatically converted or not, and just kind of do it directly there. All right, so we have John Barry checking in from Old England. So thanks for joining us today. All right, Sergios is saying hola to everyone. Thanks for joining. All right, and we have Rufus checking from Waterford, Michigan. So if that's Rufus Harris, please let me know. And glad to see you on the live stream. All right, sorry, my chat field just jumped. See if lots of questions in my future. All right. All right, so we see Michael Pierce. Okay, so I think it's directed to someone else. All right, so Sergios is a 13-year-old producer, just saying, all right. So thank you for joining us on the live stream today. All right. All right, Nick is saying for Tuesdays, Zoom meetup, Michael Wagner, what a star, awesome Tuesday. So yeah, I had a great time kind of learning new things from Michael as well. So I'm like, so yeah, I kind of miss being able to travel around and hang out with people like Michael all the time and just kind of learn little bits of wisdom and insights. All right, so we see from Shihab UA, please add custom scale and chord option in Cubase. So there is a custom scale option already. So if we have a Midi event, you could come over here and we'll see. So let's say when we double click on the editor and go to the scale assistant, that you could create your own, you could set up your own musical scale, so you can create your own scales. And the chords, whatever notes that you have within the chords, will, whatever notes you dictate within the chord track can automatically be interpreted. So there's no real need for custom chords. So let's say if we add a chord track, and let's say I am just wanted to input a chord right here. So I'm just going to just randomly just lay my hand down. And then we could just automatically determine the chord if you have MIDI input on. Now, sometimes you may want different spellings for different chords, and you could do that by going into Preferences and go into Event Display to chords and pitches, and now we could set, if you wanted to have custom chords, you could do that directly in the Preferences. So if you wanted your, a flat fifth chord to be, labeled a particular way, you could set that up in the Preferences. So I think it's already all there. All right, so we have the second question is folder equals group track, optional button so it can automatically route based on folder. But one thing you have to realize with folder tracks is folder tracks are not just limited to audio tracks. They are, so, you could have MIDI, you could have a video track, you could have a chord track within a folder track. So, but what you can do is, let's say if I have all of these particular tracks, there is a macro that's automatically done. So if we go to edit to macros, and my macro list is much larger than, there's several macros that come with it. But one of the macros that's standard that you can see is selected tracks to new folder and add group channel. So at this point, we can say, okay, this is my drums. And now we've created a new folder and route it directly to that. But realize that a folder track can contain a lot of other elements that are automatically, that don't actually pass audio. So our folder tracks aren't limited in that particular way. All right, and thanks for joining us on the live stream today. All right. All right, you see Michael Pierce says he had a panic of a day today with the ADR session. He's just gradually falling asleep. Understand. All right, wonderful to see Daniela Tocan on. Glad you could make it today. John A. Walker is joining us from the house on top of the world. Thanks for being here. And since Michael Pierce has mentioned sleep, Nick is yawning. So Don't do that on my live stream. Kidding. All right. I want everyone to be happy and awake and alert. So we see Best Green Jesus just says another Alt-Shift command. Nice. Yeah. All right. So we see, hi, Greg. Can you explain the benefits and differences between a group and a folder track? All right. So a folder track is primarily for organization on a project window. So imagine if you have, 3,000 tracks in your template, you're probably going to have folders. So you might have a violin folder, a violin 2 folder. You might have a strings folder, a brass folder, and then within the brass folder, a trumpets folder. You may have a trumpets long samples, a trumpets short samples, muted trumpets folder. So the folders are strictly going to be for organization purposes so that you can manage large number of tracks. So, and again, as we just mentioned, folders can contain any type of track. So you may want to have a tempo track. You may want to have a video file. You may want to have a VCA track within there. You may want to have an arranger track within a particular folder, a ruler track. So, so they don't necessarily, we don't want folders to be limited to passing audio because there's a lot of parts in Cubase, like MIDI tracks that don't necessarily pass audio to external MIDI devices. What a group track allows us to do is I want to take all of my drums and instead of, adjusting the volume of each of these and applying a compressor on each of those, I could take the collective entity. So I'm going to add a group channel to the selected channels. As we click here, now if I wanted to bring all my drums up or down or EQ my drums all together, at this point, I could just come over here and utilize a group track for that. So if I wanted to say, okay, let's put a compressor on, and at this point, I want to, just come over here, put a tiny bit of compression, and I want all my drums to go through like an envelope shaper that now, and I want it a gate. So now all of my drums get processed collectively together so that, and sometimes that could add more cohesion. So a lot of times people may take background vocals, send it to a group, and then put a compressor on a group instead of having it all on individual tracks. So folder tracks can contain any type of track, and they're not limited to just being audio tracks, which is why there's the distinction between them. Okay, reading through comments. Thanks for all the great questions. And again, if you learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. All right, so we have a question from George Cositas. Can I use different MIDI channel on the same MIDI event? So yeah, so let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so we'll come over here, let's activate this project and say we're going to have all right, so we come over here and we'll say, let's take this, I'll just add an instrument track. Okay, so I want to take this particular piano part here. Okay, and I'm going to add, let's say, an organ on track 2. So let's say, let's go over here to organ, and we'll make it electric organ. All right, so we have, all right, I'll do something less obnoxious than that. Okay, so let's say, okay, so now I'm going to play this particular part. All right, and All right, so okay, so let me just mute this for now. All right, here, let me just. All right, so we'll say, okay, on this, we'll have Silk Roads. So now we play this back. So now I wanted to put an organ track on. So let me just. All right, so we say our organ track. Okay, so I wanted to take some of the notes and send it out to MIDI channel 2. So let's just come here. So we see that when we select notes that we'll see our MIDI channel indicated. So we'll see channel indicated here. So I'm going to take these and let's put them onto channel 2. And I wanted these notes to be on channel 1. These notes on 2. Let's say these notes on channel 1. So we should be able to, and I'm just going to put this on MIDI channel any. And we just check. All right, so we can load up. Sorry. So whatever, so you could just select the particular notes in the editor. So you want to put the channel onto MIDI channel any, but now these tracks are set to MIDI channel 1. Going to organ, these notes here are set to channel 2, which is the Silk Roads. And even if we wanted to come over here and say, okay, I want the top notes to be set to channel 1 and the bottom notes to be set to channel 2. So now we could combine. So that's how you could have 2 or up to 16 MIDI channels on the same part or event, but they probably would need to be going to the same MIDI output port as well. So let me give that a try. All right, so we see from Filter Freak just says I meant endless encoders, not rotary. I'm having real issues set up on maps with devices with endless encoders. So let's just see if there's a setting in the MIDI remote for the particular. All right, so let's say if I'm here. So maybe if you come over here, Filter Freak, and see if you change. You might be able to adjust directly in here, but you could definitely use kind of endless encoders. So, but maybe go into the knob properties and see if you adjust it there. Maybe I don't have a something with endless encoders that's configured. But so I would maybe look in here for the value mode and see if that does a trick for you. See, Uno Momento is just asking, are we not getting any ice cream today? So I know that like where Michael Teams lives in the United States, there's a lot of power outages from an ice storm and a winter storm. So there could be a chance that maybe Michael Teams doesn't have electricity today. So I saw that there's like 400,000 houses in Texas without electricity, and he was kind of in that area. So we'll see if Michael Teams does join us. All right, so we have question. Please explain Nuendo headphones match. Is this calibration software for headphones? Can this use plugin Wavelab 2, or do you need third-party plugin? Thanks for help. So, the headphone match plugin that we see in Nuendo, the intention is like if, a lot of people are going to be doing binaural monitoring for Dolby Atmos mixes. So, and to make this more accurate, they've taken, so what you're trying to do is to give you the listening experience of, 12 speakers in a pair of headphones. So to make this more accurate, the headphone match plugin in Nuendo is set up, and I'll just kind of turn it on here to show, like in the control room inserts. So we could say, what I need to have kind of the most accurate representation when trying to work in Dolby Atmos mixing, and here we could have different profiles for different headphones. So you say, okay, I have an Audio-Technica M50X, and this will adjust the EQ curve and some of the psychoacoustic information to accurately translate kind of spatial audio mixing into headphones. That's the intention. So it's part of Nuendo. It's not part of Wavelab, and I think it's more geared towards more immersive work as opposed to being like straight corrective EQ. All right, so we see question from Benny. Have switched to Yamaha HS7 now in the studio. Which Yamaha sub would you recommend to them? So I think it's like an what's the model? But they have an 8-inch sub that works well with it. But they do put out quite a bit of bass. So, I know some people with subs, what some of my really picky engineer friends do if they have subs is they'll do a sub for each speaker so that they don't worry about any phasing issues. But there is an 8-inch Yamaha sub that's really kind of voiced to go directly with the HS series. So let me see if I can just find a model number here real quick. Yeah, so in HS8S. So if you go to this Yamaha sub, this is the one that's really kind of that's really designed to work with the HS speakers and kind of voiced appropriately for that. But I've done a lot of I've done a lot of demos with HS7s in big rooms and haven't had any problems. All right, wonderful to see Tiago from Brazil. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so you see from Jeffrey Von Ray, why not use sends rather than direct monitoring? I like it because, the sends can have variable amounts, whereas direct monitoring is going to be fixed. You can use sends, as I indicated, but, some people may mess up and have different settings for pre and post fader. And you do have the option of, altering the levels and sending it to, and it's easier to do the routing to a direct routing. And if you have a project that has, multiple sends in it already, you don't have to worry about, taking away sends. So direct routing is kind of I find it to be a little faster and easier way. But both ways will get you to the finish line. All right, so we see a question from Casey Dodson. Direct routing is post fader, right? So yes. Okay, so we see Soren just says, thanks, Greg, about the parallel compression. Again, thanks to Michael Pierce. You're onto it also. Okay, sorry. All right, so we see Vinny Sabatino checking in from Florida, from Orlando. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see from Jose Antonio Gazzo, question, when I solo defeat tracks in the mixer console, it doesn't translate to the editor tracks. Is there a way to make them sync? Okay, so let's say, just go back to a different project. So I'm not sure if it's for audio or MIDI tracks, but let's go ahead. All right, so say I have take this off. All right. All right, so let's say we have our bass. And we'll put this in solo defeat. And so I'll just hold down on the solo button, and let's say when I go into the guitar part in the editor. So I think, the intention is that when you're in the editor that you probably want to maybe specifically listen to an element, like as you're mixing it. But because you have to carry that over. So let's say now if I come over here and let's solo. So if we solo a track, the solo defeat doesn't affect. But a lot of times if you're specifically in the editor, you want to solo what's in the editor. It's not necessarily carried over, but let me see if there's a preference. That would affect this. I don't remember one. Yeah, I don't see a preference for that. Yeah, so I think if you're specifically solo in the editor, that's a different solo stage than on the mix console. But I'll pass it along as a suggestion for maybe a preference request. So we see from G4JM Pro, my Cubase freezed most of the times when I opened it, at times when I closed it. So usually, check to see, usually when I hear that, Cubase is freezing on opening or closing, it's like a plugin, especially on closing, like a plugin that doesn't release itself from memory while Cubase is closing down. So, some people will close the project first and then close Cubase, and that could, free up the memory, but often it's going to be related to a third-party plugin. So, see if you're using a particular plugin on a project, or if you have a third-party plugin, that's often going to be the culprit in cases like that. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. Can you explain how I can have different mix scenes? So I'm not sure if it's more of a visual scene or like an audio setup scene. So let's say if it's visual and we're in our mix console. So let's say I only want to see. Let's say I'm gonna hide my input channels and I only want to see my drums. Okay, so I'll just come here. We will say I want to only see selected channels. So we'll show only selected channels, and here I want to see my routing, my inserts, channel strip, and send. So I want to see this. So what we could do now is save this as a configuration. So we'll say drums. Now let's say I want to see guitars. So we'll just come over here quickly and say, okay, I want to show all channels. And now I want to see my guitar tracks. So we'll say, let's show selected channels. Let me just, mess that up. All right, so let's say we're going to take our 3 tracks here and show only selected channels. And let's say I don't want to see routing, but every one of these I want to see compressor, and let's say my envelope shaper. So, and let's say even if I think we could just choose to, okay, I don't want to see my meter bridge, my EQ curve. So now I want to see only my envelope shaper on these devices. So let's go ahead and save this as a configuration. So let's say to bass and guitar. So if I did this right, I think we could just come over here. We can see our drums, and then we could say, okay, now show me my bass and guitars. And we could have our different elements open. Now, if it's more of like a mix scenario, we could come over here. So that's for a visual scene. But if we wanted to see all of our tracks, let's say now instead of a visual scene, we wanted an audio scene. What I could do is take snapshots. So we'll say, okay, I want to select all my tracks here, and let's take a snapshot. Okay, so now I want to adjust. Say, okay, I want my bass up. I want my drums to all be down, and my right guitar to be loud and my left guitar to be quiet. And then I could take a snapshot. Okay, and then let's say, and this one, my next mix, I want all my drums to be way too loud and my left guitar to be loud and right guitar and bass to be soft. So take a snapshot. So now that I have a snapshot, I can come over here and let's say I'm playing my mix back. Then I can say, let's go to snapshot 1. So we could right click and we'll just say, and then we could just recall our particular snapshots right here. So, and we could keep notes on them. So as we wanted to just come over here, we could keep mix console snapshots as well. So that way you could just kind of go back and forth between different snapshots while we're playing. Again, just come here. Okay, I want to go to snapshot 1. So let it play just a little bit. Now say I want to go to snapshot 1. I want to go to this snapshot. So this way we could just kind of click to the right of the snapshot and recall it. So that's how you could do kind of an audio snapshot. So let me know which one, if that helped. Thanks for all the great questions. Get my monitoring computer up. All right. Okay, reading through comments. All right. Okay, so we see from Vinny Sabatino, please, my 4 workspaces are not coming up as I save them. I've resaved them, updated them. So, you know, it could really depend on kind of if you, so I'm not sure if you did the workspaces as, so when you go to like, you know, your different workspaces at this point, we could have, you know, project workspaces. And these may be, you know, more attuned to, you know, making sure like, you know, if you have a global workspace for very audio and there's no very audio that's being utilized in the project, you know, that may not work so well. But let's say, again, if I come here and say, okay, I want this to be, so let's say I want that as a particular workspace. So we will add a project workspace. But let's say, okay, now I want a global workspace for my mixer. And let's come over here to very audio on my bass. that we could just now have these automatically configured to jump around, but sometimes contents within, we could, have workspaces and these will open up to Windows, but sometimes the content within the Windows may be in a different state. So just kind of be aware of that, but make sure that, and you can tell me like what specific elements, and if you're using project workspaces or global workspaces, maybe in elements that aren't in the particular project you're in as well. Okay, Benny from Sweden wants everyone to hit the like button. And Uno Memento says like the hit button. So. All right, so we see, is there anything in Cubase/Nuendo that's comparable to memory locations in Pro Tools? So I don't know what memory locations are, but maybe it's a marker. So if you just wanted to come here, like you say, okay, I want this for my verse, chorus, and we could come over here, we could see our marker track. And now if I wanted to navigate, I could just hit, N to go to next marker, or B to go to previous marker. So while we're playing, say, okay, I just want to go back to. So let me know if that's what a memory location is, but we may just, if you right click and add a marker track, and then you can navigate, you could have cycle markers or position markers. But let me know if it's if I'm misunderstanding, just because I don't know Pro Tools at all. If that's what the memory locations are. All right, so I see a question. Hi, some of my plugins are not playing. So if your plugins aren't playing at, if they're if you look at them and the plugin looks like it's disabled, it's like, okay, I have my inserts, and let's say we go to our dynamics, and I have like a multi-band envelope shaper, and if you look at it and it looks like it's kind of turned off, it could be that you just need to go to the constrained delay compensation if you have that on, and that will probably turn the plugin on. And the concept, the idea behind the constrained delay compensation is to bypass plugins that exceed a certain amount of latency. So if the plugin is kind of like a heavier processing plugin, it takes more time for processing or more sophisticated, make sure that you have the constrained delay compensation turned off. And let me know if it's an audio plugin or an instrument plugin as well. All right, so we see Sable Winters is thumbs up number 61 at 2:03 p.m., so I'm about 32 minutes behind. It's great to see you on, Sable, for the Zoom meetup, and loved your new Taylor guitar. Thanks for showing that and sharing it with everyone. Sable always shares her newest gadget that she gets on our Zoom meetups. It's a highlight. So. All right, so you see Robert Higgins just says, thank you guys. The information you provide is invaluable. That's great. Glad it's helpful for people. All right, so we see from Noah, says, hi, Greg, I sent you an email about it to be more elaborate. Hi, Greg, my question is sidechain limiting for stems with using more send groups? Can you please show how to? Okay, so I think that the question, I'll go ahead and take a quick look at it now since you bring it up. I was going to do it a little bit later, but that's fine. Okay, so this question Noah had sent in. So question about needing more sends. I would like that the stems will sound exactly the same as the full mix when they are being played back together. The problem I would like to address is, let's say I have a limiter and a mix bus, but I would like to export separate stems. If I solo each stem and export it one by one at a time, the limiter and the mix bus is no longer hearing the rest of the mix, only the solo track, and therefore it applies less limiting. If I later combine them separately, exported stems, I will get music that is much louder than the full mix export, and potentially by clipping, alternative, copying instances in the limiter plugin to each stem will give the same result, where the limiter is not aware of the other material. Since Cubase only has 8 sends and I have 21 stems, is it possible to use group tracks? Has a chain that will allow me to add more send through them, so you could definitely add more group tracks. And I did some playing around with this, and what I did is I created like this project. I ran a limiter on it in the master bus. So we go to the master bus. You see I just kind of added the limiter here just to give it more gain. And then I created my drums, and I sent my drums all to a group, right? And I sent my bass all to a group. Okay. And then I sent all of my guitars to a group. So this is my guitar group, and my bass group, and my drum group. So again, if I just come over here, let's say I solo my drum group and bypass the limiter, you kind of hear it immediately, so it's a difference. So if I now want to come over and what I did is I went to an export audio mix down, and then I took, I did one export that was my drums, bass, and my guitar group, which is group 03, and exported the stems separately. And then I fed these on the effects. When we do the multiple, I included these to do the master group sends, the CSPM profile. And then I just did a stereo mix out. Okay, so, and then I put so I took those group tracks and rendered them, and I put them into a new project here. Okay, so now what I did is I have my drums group, so we'll activate this. So let me just solo. So I have my drums group here, my bass group, and my guitar group. So those are my stems broken out, and it's through the limiter. And then I also have my stereo mix file, which I imported here. So what I did now is I took these 3 groups and I selected them, and what I did is a render in place. So I didn't change the level, so all the groups are at 0 dB. My master out is at 0 dB, and I did a render in place. And with my render in place, I just came over here and said, okay, let's get to my render settings, and I chose, okay, we're going to do it as one event. I set the channel settings, and we mixed it down to one audio file. And that audio file is this file directly here. So this is our groups of our stems that are bounced down. Now this file is our file that was the original stem. So I think what you're saying in the email is that the stems are going to be louder or different volume levels because the other sources aren't feeding and hitting the limiter in the same way. So, but as we come over here, I'm going to now select the two files. Now let's go to audio statistics. And let's do an analysis of the two files. So one is the rendered in place stems, and the other one is the original mixdown. And we look at the levels. The levels are identical. So it's minus 11.9 LUFS, 11.9, minus 14.1, minus 16.2, 4.2. And we look at DC offset, bit depth. Our levels here are identical between them. So it seems like the levels are identical. And then what I did, and I was just working on this right before the live stream started, is I'm going to take the two files here and solo them, and they will sound louder together. So, and I just want to make sure that these are kind of in their origin position. So make sure that these are right. So we'll just make sure we're going to edit to move to origin. So the levels appear to be identical. Let me just... just make sure. All right, and I'll just see if I could line them up manually here real quick. All right, so let's take off my grid here. So, but when I had them lined up and then I flipped the phase, they did cancel, the phase did cancel itself out. So, but I don't have them lined up. So, but it looks like when we look at the audio statistics here, that the levels are going to be identical between the summation of the different parts. Now, this also can change the behavior of this. There was some changes in Cubase 11 to 12, but if we look at the statistics here, it will just, they are identical. So I don't think that there's any change in those particular levels. So let me know if that's what you were looking at, Noah. So. All right, so and then if you said Cubase has only 8 sends and have 21 stems, is it possible to use group tracks as a chain? So you definitely do that. You could also use, your 8 tracks. Like when we come here, we could see our 8 tracks, and this is a great time to, when you go to racks, you could have 8 that are going via sends, or you could have 8 direct routing groups in addition to your 8 sends as well. So that'll give you 16. So that may minimize some of your routing capabilities. All right. So. All right, and I just want to check, see if I think I had it maybe set up. Let me just see if I revert that particular project to where it was saved. I just want to see if I get, if So I had moved the channel over. Just for my own personal curiosity here. So. Yeah. But when I had done it before, it did cancel out. So I probably had changed timing positions of this. But play around with that, Noah. All right. Just continue on with some of the questions. All right. Wonderful to see Gareth on the live stream. All right. Sorry, my chat field just jumped to me. Okay, so we see a question from Sable Winters. Greg, I forgot to ask Michael Wagner the best formula to master for vinyl. What are your thoughts? You just can't have you have to be very careful with the low end, and I think Michael mentioned this, that, at a certain point, the low frequencies, if they weren't very kind of monoized and kind of brought in, that the stylus would jump out of the groove. So that's one thing that Michael had mentioned, was to make sure that the low end, wasn't very wide stereo wise, because that would cause the particular needle to jump out of the groove. All right, so Bruce Bruton just says, "Hi, Greg. Thanks for the Zoom meeting on Tuesday. It's very interesting with Michael Wagner. It was nice to see everyone's faces. I always love the little Zoom meetups and look forward to it on end of the month at February. So I think maybe the 28th will be our next one." All right. So Larry asked, is there a way to have two different ASIO USB devices active? Apologies for a potentially embarrassing question. What about ASIO for All, since it seems to offer that ability? So while ASIO for All can have multiple audio interfaces together, there's no way that they're not really properly synchronized. Because as Cubase is playing, it's sending audio and playing back audio at sample accurate precision. So in Cubase, it's up to 1/192,000th of a second. So if you have, there's no way for those two audio interfaces through like ASIO for All to actually be really in sync. So it's kind of like, if you're, so the two streams, the two audio interfaces aren't ever really going to be in sync. So it's just kind of a limitation of how USB deals with audio. If you have PCI interfaces, if you have Thunderbolt interfaces, if you have, even FireWire interfaces, those all have the abilities often within the particular, if you have multiple units of the same interface to be contained, to be utilized together. If you're using something like Dante, that will allow you to use multiple devices and have a common digital audio clock so that everything stays in sync. but it's not available for multiple USB audio interfaces. So, so you could use ASIO for all, but realize that your tracks are just going to play out of time. So if that's okay with you, then ASIO for all will work. Most people find it less than satisfactory. All right, so we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas has arrived, so I think the virtual ice cream will begin. All right, and Nick said that he sent electricity via Discord to Michael Teams, so hopefully that helped. Hope you're doing well in your storm and your weather situations. All right, so we see from Mutlu, hi, is there an indicator in Cubase where we can see the chords we play in real time? So let's just jump to different project here. So if you're doing it kind of within a MIDI editor, so let's say, okay, I just wanted to come here. Let's say we have electric piano. And I'm just gonna, we could do this again. I'll just grab my, within the MIDI editor where we could see. And then what we need to do is to come over here, make sure the status line is turned on. I will activate record in the MIDI editor. So let's say as we're recording and we look here, we'll see the current chord display. So then you could just see it directly there. You could also just, look at it in the chord track if you wanted to. And you could record in a MIDI track and the chord track simultaneously. So, but you could just see it right here with the current chord display. All right, just reading through comments. Thanks for all the great discussion, all the great questions. All right, so we see, hi Greg, can you experiment your approach to sampling using Cubase the old way? So, one of the things, there's a couple of ways to do it. So, if you just have any audio file in Cubase, so I'm not sure what the old way was, if we're going back to, emulators or Emaxes or Kais, but one of the things that you could do is obviously anytime that you have an audio file is just to drag it down to your sampler track, and then we can just play it kind of like so. And then if we wanted that to, play in audio warp mode, where we could just have it automatically play back in sync. So whatever pitch you play will play back at the same tempo, as opposed to like old school samplers where if you play lower, it's going to be longer. But if you have like the full versions of Hallion or the full version of Groove Agent, so let's say we'll come over here to Hallion, and if you wanted to record directly into Hallion, there is a sidechain input. So I could say, okay, I want to take this particular sidechain from this particular track, and feed that into, so as I play, I could just sample. So within Halion, there's entire, ways of just being able to go directly into your sample recorder. You could trigger notes from Midi and then capture the Midi note with the velocity. So, and we could do the same with Groove Agent where it has a sidechain input. So that's how you could sample in. If you just want to drag and drop samples, you could do it in a sampler track. If you want multiple samples, then Groove Agent SE, you could drag and drop multiple samples in. But maybe if you could be, if there's something specific when you refer to sampling in Cubase the old way, let me know. All right. All right, so we see David M. He just says, great Zoom last Tuesday. Thanks for joining in. Always a pleasure to see you. All right. So we see Val Lee's in a session in Vienna, and he hopes to join in later. So hope you make it. Thanks for being on. You just had to hit the like button if you pop in and pop out. All right, so we see from John Costigan, it says, thanks again for the instrument to MIDI transfer macro. It works great. So the question, when volume automating a group channel with its fader, the red channel indicator stays lit and the fader doesn't move. Okay, so let's say I want to take this. I'll take this track and let's put it in the loop and activate the cycle, and I'll send it to a group track. Okay, so now I want to automate the group track. I'll just get to my fader here. All right. And we'll see if it just follows along. All right, so it says, when volume automating a group channel with its fader, the red channel indicator stays lit and the fader doesn't move. Let me know if I did something differently than you did. And see if once you open up the group channel, since there's no actual content in the group channel, you could now just come right over here and you should see the automation as it's written in, just kind of in the main project window. So let me know if I did something differently than you did, John. You just see Sables gave kudos to Jazz Dude just on his knowledge, and it says, there's a comment from Jazz Dude just saying, I made my hobby to a profession, and at the end I landed here. I remember having a discussion at Frankfurt trade show with Ernst Boos, who is the founder of Propeller Heads, and we're talking just at the bar late at night, and he's like, yeah, what do you do when your hobby turns into your job? So his thing was he was just started making like model airplanes like when he was a kid. So, but yeah, it's sometimes tricky when your hobby turns into your job and career. So. All right, you see Michael Teams is distributing an ice screen, so. All right, so you see from the Heartbreak Time Machine, I've smashed the like button. I cannot tell you how helpful these continue to be. Oh my God! So it's great. Or hope it's always, you always hope it's helping people. All right, Michael Team says smash the like button so I can be gainfully employed. So. All right, so you see that's the closest to memory locators Cubase has in Pro Tools. You can save track visibility with markers. So you could always tie the two of them together. So let's say if I wanted to come over here, so you could tie it together in a macro. So I don't know the functionality, but let's say okay, so we could say go to so let's come over here to markers or to our key commands. All right, and I'll just make a couple channel visibilities here. So let's say, okay, I only want to see bass. All right, so let's see if we could come over here to new macro. Okay, so let's say I want to go to, I think we go to transport. Here, I'll just do to marker 3. Here, I'll just set it to a different marker here. All right, so let's say I'll just come here. Let's see if this will work. So go to edit to macros. And let me just see if I do this. So we could just say macros. Yeah, so you might be able, let me see if I switch the macro around first. Maybe switch the order of it. let's just make sure it's active window here. So try one more time, but I may be able to create it. I think I could create a macro to do it, but okay, let me move this to slot 1. So, but I'll play around with it over the weekend, see if I can get it sorted out. But thanks for the information. All right, reading through comments. Thanks for all the great questions. All right, so we see a question from this Ninja Sacred. I've been working on a project, and when I came to open it today, it says all my files are missing. So make sure you'll probably get a path. Like, let's say if we go to open up a project, so let's say if I come here to this project, like I have a file missing, I just haven't resolved in the pool. But if you're using external drive, so this will give you the path of where the particular audio file is. So see if you look in your computer in Windows Explorer or your Mac Finder, if you actually see the particular files. So see if you could actually go to the location, and if you look in the pool window as well. So even if the files aren't there, if you go to your media menu to pool window, at this point, if you kind of slide over, you could see the path directly here. So make sure that the particular files are still there. If for some reason, like the files were deleted from your computer, then Cubase can't necessarily find the particular files. But look to make sure that you look in the path that the files are there, and then if they are, you could locate them. But if for some reason they got deleted and moved to the recycle bin or trash bin, at that point you might have to remove them if they are there, and then Cubase should be able to find them. So we see a question from Rob G. Is Hallian 6 better than Cubase Sampler to work with chopped vocals? Hallian 6 is going to be like a way more encompassing tool. Like if all you want to do is to chop vocals, then the sampler track works great for that. But so I don't think that there's any advantages to, if you want to get into more sound design type stuff, but for doing a quick vocal chop, the sampler track, I think will be more straightforward to get there. And if you haven't really done kind of like a vocal chop, just open up a quick project just to show you how easy it is to kind of do in the sampler track. All right, so let's say I just want to, like I have just a
no time to hesitate. It's all been done.
So I went through and just kind of manually edited hit points. So now I could
hesitate. You wanna You want then hesitate, but you wanna hesitate. You wanna hesitate, hesitate. Let's hesitate, but you.
So if you're just doing stuff like that now, if you wanted to take this and run it through 16 different filter stages with LFOs, then the Hallion would be a better tool. But just for doing a quick vocal chop, the sampler track or Groove Agent SE would work great. See Gareth Mist sing Sable's Taylor guitar. All right, you see Gareth is getting dinner with his daughter. It's probably a little while ago. All right, so we see question, marker track. If the marker track is selected, then N and B work for next and before. If another track is selected, then it does not work. Any way around this? So, N and B is going to be, set up for, next and back for, multiple different devices. So let's say if I want it to come over here, I have this event, I have this. So now if I'm here, I could just say, okay, go to, so this track is selected. So it's going to be based on the track selection because, so now if I hit N and B here, it's going to go there. And if I wanted to, go to this selected track, we get N to go forward and B to go backwards. So the N and B keys are going to be kind of tied to whatever the track selection is. But let's see if we can, but you could always, if we have a marker track, so let me just go ahead and drop markers track in. So I think if we just hit like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the numeric keypads, that you could navigate directly to the markers. So just on the numeric keypad, so 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's a way to do it. And let me just see if there's a to next marker key command that will only work for markers. But the N and B, since it works with all sorts of different track types, will require that the track be selected, and that's what kind of tells it as to what to go next to on. So let's see if so you could use the N and B, but again, the N and B function just requires that the particular track is selected, and I think that kind of makes sense. So if I'm on this track, I hit N and B, and let's see if we have multiple tracks selected. So if you leave kind of the marker track always selected, you could navigate between the marker tracks and this. So all right, reading through comments. So my chat field just jumped. All right. All right, so you see from Noah, hi Greg, thank you for the answer, but can you please show how to use sidechain limiting for more than 8 stems from more than 8 sends? All right, with using groups, can you please show how to? Thank you. 11 Pro. Okay, so so let's say I want to let's just create a new project. All right, so let's say we have 16 audio tracks. And let's add $16 group tracks. Okay, so let's say I want to send, so I guess we want to send one destination, like one track basically to more than 8 outputs. So let's come over here and we'll take this, let's send it to group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, group 5, group 6, group 7, and group 8. Okay, so now I want to go to, let's see if we go to group 8. Let's say group 1. Let's open that up. And now I want to send this to group 9, group 10, group 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay. All right. So now let me just add another 8 groups. Okay, so let me just check, see if I send just a quick test tone on here. I'll turn my volume down in my control room. Okay. Okay, so we have that going on. So let's go to, I think it was group 1. All right, and now we'll come over here. So say group 1. And let's take group 2. Okay, so now we should have all of our groups being fed. So let's look at our mix console here. So my one track oscillator is feeding 24 groups. Okay, and let me just so let's say if I'm putting a limiter on here, let's see. All right, just want to see if we. Okay, so I'm just going to use a compressor because this has a side chain, so I'm not sure if we're using another limiter or not. And we'll say group 24. So here we could just kind of add multiple sidechain inputs. So let me know if that is kind of what you wanted to do, but we could take that one signal and feed it to 24 groups. Doesn't seem like there's... So, but let me know if that's helpful for you, Noah. Okay, reading through comments. See, John Koskine's having problems with his Firefox and updates. All right, so we have a question. Greg, could you explain how VST Connect works for network sessions? So VST Connect was originally kind of intended for, doing a remote recording with someone. So it's a peer-to-peer connection. And what you could do is you get to your VST Cloud, you get to your VST Connect. SE comes with Cubase, and then you have the Pro version. So let's say if I'm over here, we could just go to our VST Connect. We could kind of see the person. You log in, and then what you basically do is the person you're recording will get a free version called VST Connect Performer. I think it's free for Mac and Windows and $4.99 if you're on an iPad. And basically you would set up, and you could just kind of start off once you have everything set up. Go to your VST Cloud, go to VST Connect Pro, and you say, create, you could create a performer track. And this will kind of do, all of the routing for particular tracks. And this will allow the person, you to record the person, and it's a peer-to-peer connection. And this will allow you to record that person directly into your session. So the the mix goes out to them, they monitor it, they record, their signal comes back in, and all the latency is kind of compensated for. So that's kind of and if you are doing, I don't have another computer turned on, but you could, on the VST Connect Pro version, you could actually come over here and use it on an internal network. So it's not designed for band rehearsals remotely. It's designed for kind of a peer-to-peer audio recording experience. All right, glad that Harry Olive made it onto the live stream. Okay, so we see what are your settings to play videos on YouTube while Cubase is open? So it can really depend on your audio interface. If it's kind of multi-client, but you wanted to go to your studio setup, select your audio interface, or go to audio system, and then just click on release driver when application is in background. Then you should be able to jump over to like a web browser, play something on YouTube, and then go back to Cubase. And so when Cubase is in the background, it releases the audio interface for other applications, and then we'll kind of assume it once Cubase is the active application. Okay, so we have Mike Rivera. All right, so you see, hello, and he asks, hello, Greg, I've saved some folders in my favorites, but noticed that not showing my new samples. Is there a way to scan for new samples I added, and is there a way to delete or arrange them? So if you created new folders, like favorites, and then you had done a new sample, so let's say I come over here to my file browser, and I wanted to say, like this project, I want to right click and I'm going to add it to a favorite. So we'll just call it 22. I'll jump back home and we'll go to my favorites. All right, so I see this directly here. So all you have to do is once you're in a particular folder, if you navigate back, let's say you go to your file browser, to rescan, so let's say, just find where I was. But let's see if we go to favorites here. All right. So you could just come directly here and let's say, as we select a folder, that you should be able to rescan the particular folder from right here. Let me see if it's in loops and samples, if we have different folders. So let me just go to large MediaBay and see if we can do it here real quick. So let's go to favorites. And then we could just rescan disk directly there. So if you just go to favorites in the large MediaBay, just right click and rescan favorites. And then if you wanted to reveal in Explorer or Finder, it could take you directly to there just by right clicking on the folder. So try in the larger MediaBay. I thought it would work here. But try in, if you hit F5, try to just go to your favorites folder, right click and rescan disk. And if you needed to change things within that particular folder, you could also choose reveal and Finder directly from there. All right, so we have a question from Harry Olive. Hey, Greg, would you be so kind to explain again how to enable hovering over a button by mouse and activate changing the values by a specified MIDI controller? Doesn't react on my system. Thank you. All right, so what I want to do is let's just come to our like a MIDI remote, and I'm going to add, let's say, my Choy Sauce controller. So I'm going to move this fader here, and I'm going to double click And let's go into our mapping assistant. And then we want to go to mouse pointer AI knob and just say value at mouse pointer and apply. So now this is going to function as what many people would call an AI knob. So I come over here, let's go to this particular track, and I have different plugins on. All right, so now I hover over different parameters with my mouse and I move this fader, and that's automatically controlling the particular parameter. So if I want to come here to, my different plugin parameters, again, just kind of hover. If I'm in the track, I can turn on my EQ, hover just like this. So once again, just in the mapping assistant, you could double click on, and this is after it's set up in the MIDI remote, and you want to go to mouse pointer and value at mouse pointer. And then that one knob, that one fader can control whatever, parameter you're hovering over. So you want to come over here, volume or panning, just like that. All right, we see Dubsy East 49 says, the thing about Cubase is it does everything so well in all categories. So you can't just put it in one box. All right, so we see Thermonuclear War says we're at 100 likes at 3:03 p.m. All right, so I'm still about a half hour behind. I'm going to try to catch up. So question, what's the best way to send an instrument and an audio track to a group track, or is it not possible to send an instrument track to a group track? So yeah, you could definitely do that. So let me just come here. All right, so I'll just do this. So let's say I want to send, let's say I want to send a guitar and the Verve piano in this project. So I could just say, okay, we're going to send, let's see if we could send both the instrument track and the piano. So now, that's how, so both these are now going to, I just selected an instrument track and the guitar, and they're both going to. So if I wanted to create an audio track, and we'll send its input from our guitar Verve group and hit add track. So now I can just kind of play this. So say I want to take, let me just check the output routing here, just make sure. Yeah. So now I have this audio track selected. I can now just So now I'm using that group as the input. So now we'll just play this particular group, and we should hear the guitar and the piano. And I'll just make that louder so you can hear it. So if it's an instrument track, you could just select it with an audio track, send it to a group together. All right. All right, so we see, hey, anyone know how I can make an automation of cutting a MIDI file in Groove Agent, start to stop of the sample? All right, so let's take a look and see. So I'm not sure if you're cutting the MIDI file or if you're cutting the sample, but let's take a look and see if we could automate that. Okay, so let's come over to this. And I'll just play a pattern here. So if we go to the instrument, so let's see, we can let's see if that's automatable. All right, so I'm just going to drag this out. All right. Yeah, so it doesn't look like that's automatable, but you can change it quite easily. Sorry about that. So, but let me know if that's what you wanted to do. All right, so we see I was doing kind of the group automation the same way John Costigan was. So give it another try and just make sure that it's the right group. Okay, reading through comments. All right, so we have a question from Roland Stuff. Hi, Greg, Sussex from Sussex in England. Is it possible to edit a MIDI or any other part in the editing window with all or some of the other parts playing at a reduced level underneath without upsetting the mix? All right, so let's say just open up a project here. So you could probably activate something called the listen bus. So just see if I have a project I was thinking of. Okay, well, this would work. All right, so let's say all right, so let's say I was editing the bass here. So with the listen bus turned on, and you can make kind of a macro to do this if you wanted to, but let's say I'm here. At this point, you could just click on the listen. Oh, wrong bass part, sorry. All right, so now if I was coming over here, so let's say, okay, I want to hear the strings. So if I wanted to just come right over here to my strings, you can click on the listen bus. And if you're just in a large screen mixer. So, and if you wanted to make a macro, you could do that, but you may have to kind of bring this to front. And I think I may have a macro for that. Let me just see if I could do it like while. So, but you know, experiment with kind of the listen bus with it as you play. Then exactly, I want to go to my piano part. So it's not intrinsically linked, but I could just say, okay, let's go to the piano. If you solo, everything else is turned off, but you hit the listen bus. So experiment with the listen bus, which is like the L button, and that's, you'd have to set up the control room and then come over here to inserts, and then you could adjust the amount of the listen dim. So if you're here, so you have all the air tracks just kind of dim down. or adjust how much they dim down, and then open the editor. So experiment with that. All right, reading through comments. Thanks for all the great questions. Again, if you've learned something new, make sure that you've hit the like button. Okay, sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. I have lots of questions in my future. All right. Okay, so I think I'm back where I was. Okay, so we see Ridge Green checking in, just saying he's late to the party. Okay, so Benny just sent me an email I saw. All right, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. All right, so I see a question. Hi, Greg. I use a Yamaha MoX F8 keyboard and Machine MK3 Mark III is a MIDI controller, and I have difficulty to get the same volume level in my monitors when I try to play VST instruments on those MIDI controls. So it's probably going to be maybe velocity sensitivity. So I would check, to see, you could have different velocity sensitivity on your controller. And the one thing you could check is if you go to like your MIDI inserts on a particular track, try to go to MIDI monitors or select MIDI monitor. And then as you do this, you'll hit notes and you could see the value 2, which is velocity. So as you hit hard or soft, see if those are kind of reflecting as you do it. Sometimes some controllers will have a linear velocity that you could play. So often probably the Yamaha may be set to a linear velocity so that you could play soft and loud. And others may be set to a fixed velocity where, no matter how you hit the pad, it's going to transmit a velocity value of 127. So if you're playing a virtual instrument and they sound different between the two, I would make sure that their velocity curves are the same. And sometimes, some keyboards and some drum machines and drum controllers will handle, the feel will be very different between them. So if I was to guess, I would say that the Yamaha is going to be set to linear by default for linear velocity value and can be adjusted. And I don't have a machine, but there's a good chance that like a sampling, like an MPC style workflow, may be just to always hit 127 on velocity, and that may sound louder as a result. So it could be just how but you could just hit both controllers here in the MIDI monitor just to actually see what velocity values are being captured directly into Cubase. All right, we see Mark Winslow just says aloha from Hawaii. So I'm looking forward to my trip in April there to Maui. All right, so we see from Noah says, thank you. I'll send you a movie to show, and maybe you could test it. I'll try what you've showed. Thank you so much. Yeah, let me know if that works for you. But that could take that one source to 24 groups if you needed to. All right, so silly question here. Does Cubase 12 have a 32-band EQ? So if we come over to under EQs, let's go to inserts. You get to EQ. There's a graphic. I think it's a 30-band graphic EQ. So when you open it up, we can just come over here, just kind of very old school, like fixed frequency, and you could just come over here and tweak the EQ. So it's a 30 band, so it's not 32, but I think this is probably what you're thinking of. So check out again under EQ. There's a 10-band graphic EQ as well as a 30-band graphic EQ. So, and some people still really like those for particular tasks, especially if you come from a live sound background. All right, we see from Rob G that fixed the issue. So we see from Chizui Windu. Thank you, Greg. You're a star. So I'm just an Oompa Loompa in a world of Willy Wonkas. So, but I'm glad to help people out. All right, so we see from John Costigan says, I can easily route the Groove Agent onboard mixer channels 8 through 10, but right-clicking on the pads doesn't seem to open up the same type of dialogue as Groove Agent SE to have up to 32 outputs, user error. So John, this could be depending on if you're in a beat agent or an acoustic agent. So let me go to this project, and we'll show you some of the differences. Okay, so if we're in, like, let's say we go to a beat agent kit and we open it up, each pad here, we can assign, okay, so let's say our beat agent kit, we come here and then each pad can be assigned to your 32 outputs. Now, an acoustic agent, so that's pretty straightforward and maybe kind of what you're expecting. But an acoustic agent, when we come to, let's say, the snare, what we could do is realize that this is going to be multi-mic'd, so we're going to have multiple mics on our kick, plus the kick mic is getting picked up in the snare, it's getting picked up in the toms, the overheads, the rooms. So we don't want you to necessarily have one source that goes, so it's not necessarily based on the pad, but when we go to the mixer, so we can say, okay, I go to my kick. So all the different kick samples that are now being spread across the room per se can now go out of the 32 outputs. So and depending on a kit, it may group like the snare, hi-hat, it may group like the rim shots and the snares together. And that could be, multiple microphones on the snare and you're using the same, often when you're thinking of like the phase relationship of an acoustic kit, you're going to use the same microphone to pick up the rim shot. So different samples may be grouped together into these. And this is kind of a lot of the hassle of making like an acoustic kit sound authentic is to maintain these relationships between the different ones. So that all the different samples could be carried over. Now, if for some reason you're just like, oh, I really need this, this snare, and I just want to take my kick and snare and I love how it sounds, you could just, solo the snare, play one note, convert it into an audio file and drop it into a Groove Agent Beat Agent kit. But realize that when we're taking multiple, to give you the same experience of a properly recorded kit, that's why the pads themselves, because if we come here to the snares, we may have a different MIDI note that triggers like the rim shot. So like the side stick, that would be, that goes to the same channel and it's mixed just like the actual microphone would on a drum. So these would respond to different notes, but the audio routing goes into mixer groups, and then these mixer groups can be routed to different channels. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so we see Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina, and saying he's at the Steinberg local headquarters. That's good. I've never been to the Beulahville, North Carolina office. Maybe when our travel budgets come back, we can go. All right, we see Gareth has fed his daughter Lola, so that's good. Was it a typical Friday night pizza, I ask. All right, Brian Sawyer just purchased a Spectralayer upgrade in Wavelab 11, and the fun has just started. So Gareth asks, so what prizes and freebies did I miss this time? So it was the free SSL 48-channel console. So, but Michael Teens got it. Just kidding. All right. Gareth says the newer crop of Cubase included plugins are all classy. All right, so we have Jesse Jose says shout out to you, Greg. I'm his first Cubase tutor. So yeah, it's weird. One of the guys that worked at our company for a long time says, "Oh, I learned Cubase watching all your tutorials." So. And it says years later, he's starting a production company from Jesse Jose. Congratulations. I wish you the best of luck. All right, so you see Cubase X just says instrument to group. Thanks, Greg, but you sent them together. If I want to send an instrument track to an existing group track, how could I do that? Thanks in advance. Okay, so let's say I have an existing, I want to take a group track here. I'll add a group track. Okay, we'll make it a stereo group. And I want to take this synth bass and send it to the group. So, when we come here, you may not see, this will be MIDI stuff, but if you click on the audio channel settings here, we could say, okay, I want to take this and route it to group 1. All right, so let's see if that's, I created group 2. So now this, and I want to take this drum program. So let's say I have Forget the Past as well. So I want to send this to group 2. So now when we play back our different sources, I could now have my synth bass. All going to my group. So instead of looking for, this is often the MIDI output, you'll see like this little, and this is the audio characteristics for the virtual instrument. So click on there, you get to edit channel settings, and then you could send it to the group, right like so. All right, so we see from Jesse Jose, what compressors are band specific, maybe using a sidechain feature. So if you wanted to, if you have like the multi-band compressor, so if you just say, okay, I'll take this audio track, we'll get to the inserts and dynamics, and then there's multi-band compressor directly here. So, and that has sidechain on it too. All right, just reading through comments. All right, so we see Spike Williams has made it. Thanks for joining the live stream today. Jesse Jose saying the Cubase index is fabulous, honestly. So yeah, kudos to Jan for all his great work with that. Okay, so you see question. Hey, I triggered the delay with compression, but whatever I do, the main vocals play together with the tracks. I want the backs don't be messed with the main vocals. Says when I want the main vocals playing, I want the backs to be muted 100%. If I try expander and gate, but nothing happens, any other idea the compressor cannot help. Okay, so let's say just jump here. Activate this. All right, so let's say I want to take so let's say I will take two sources. I want one to okay, so let's say I want to take the bass and just let's just revert this quickly. Hang on, sorry. All right, so say if I don't want one track to play while the other one is playing, so say I'll take this. All right, so let's see if we can. All right, so let's say while the bass is playing, we don't want to hear the kick. So I will put my sidechain. This. Okay, so let's see. All right, so let me see if we can. All right, so let's say I want bass. All right, let me just think about this for a second. All right, so let's say our compressor's here, so I want. All right, so we just swap it around. Let's see if I put the dynamics here. Let me just see if we could do it with the gate. If our gate has a sidechain on it. Yeah. All right, so let's try with the gate. Okay, so let's come over here. Right, so the bass is playing, and now when the bass stops, all right, let me. Okay, let me just come over here. Let's get to the sends. So now let's say the bass plays. So sorry, I'm having kind of a bit of a brain cramp on that, but I'll play with it and see if I could figure out for Tuesday how to just completely silence the other tracks. Sorry about that. All right, let's just move on. All right, so we see from Got Yours is I'm really hoping they updated the lower zone mixer. So let me know if there's any particular things you want to see in the lower zone mixer, and I can pass it on. See Jesse Jose asked the same things. All right, so we see from Got Yours is be more complete, have control of routing. So the lower zone mixer, often people don't necessarily need the routing because the routing is always already available in the inspector. So, there's no real need to automatically see the routing if the elements are all visible directly here as soon as you select a channel. So the high and low filters, zone control. So the zone control you could do. So the high and low filters, you'd have to do it on a channel level. But if we go to the zones, we can just say, okay, we want to go to our zones here. And if I wanted my master bus to always be anchored to the right, I will come over here and we could just anchor it. So wherever you're at, that could be fixed. So the zones are in the lower zone mixer. Visibility control. So if you wanted to come over here to your mixer visibilities, so this could be synchronized directly with the main. So whatever channels that we have selected here in visibility, we could have this for the lower zone as well. So if we wanted to just come and say, okay, I want it only to see my let's say we go to our track visibility. I only want to see what's in the folder. I want it to hide. So those are synchronized already with your different visibility settings. So if we wanted to, take different tracks away, we could hide those particular tracks and the visibility works just like and we also see history control. So like for the edit history, make sure that you come directly here, open up the 3 dots. And if you have moved a bunch of different tracks or adjusted different parameters, at that point you have your edit undos, your mixer undos, and your mixer redos right there. So there's a lot of that stuff is available in the lower zone. So not the high and low filters, but most of that stuff you could already do. See, Gareth didn't do pizza tonight. He did Five Guys hamburgers. Yeah. So Five Guys was founded just a couple miles from where I live. So it's interesting that they've turned into a worldwide phenomena. So. All right, so we see Jesse Jose says, how about being able to easily reorder the faders left it right by clicking and holding? So yeah, currently it's not available in the mix console, but if you're using like the lower zone mixer, it's easy enough to just kind of come here and drag and drop different tracks, and you see that reflected in the mixer. All right, so I think I misread the side chaining. Maybe it was just the delay. So let me just see if I have a project, I could try it on real quick here, where we want the delay to be triggered. So you see, look for this project here. Just sneak up here. I'm just going to reread this. I'll just try this quickly so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it because we already did. All right. Different project. Let me just see if I have the original one. Yeah. Okay, so let's say I have my lead vocal here.
The moment I laid eyes on you, don't it make you feel good?
And let's say I have my background vocals.
Knowing that somebody wants to give you their heart. Somebody wants to take you just the way you are.
Okay, so let's say we want to take the delay on the background vocals and duck it based on the lead vocal. Okay, so let's come over here and let's get to our effects channels. All right, so we have our stereo delay.
Don't it make you feel good? Knowing that somebody.
Okay, so let's come over here and let's get to the channel inserts. And let's compress. We'll throw our dynamics on here.
Don't it make you feel good?
All right.
Falling before I knew. All at once he kissed my face. The world was like a brand new place. Felt my fears all fly away. Don't it make you feel good? Knowing that somebody loves you. Don't it make you feel good? Knowing that somebody wants to give you their heart.
All right, so let's see if I send this to.
Somebody wants to take you just the way you are. Don't it make you feel good?
So you could hear the delay kind of kicking in there.
Know you found
So let's say as we go into the chorus.
I knew.
So now we'll hear the delay be ducked.
The world was like a brand new place. Felt my fears all fly away. Don't it make you feel good? Knowing that somebody loves you. Don't it make you feel good?
Yeah, so now as soon as I stop the lead vocal, then the delay. So I'll mute the lead vocal, and now you'll hear the delay kick in. So that seems to be working. Sorry for misunderstanding before. All right. Okay, my chat field jumped. Okay. Okay, so you see Turbo Praise. It says, hope that my family are doing well. Posted a question before the live chat at start. So we may have already answered, but if you let me know what the question is, I could let you know if we did cover it. All right, so we see how to swap channels in the mix console in Cubase 12. So you can't necessarily just drag and drop here, but any channel that you move will, in the project window, will automatically move and reflect in the mix console. All right, so we see Marcus just asking if anyone has gotten the GPU audio beta running in Cubase 12, so I haven't tried it out. All right, so we see from Ace nowadays, says, hope you're well. Could you explain how to use the MIDI Learn in Cubase 12 and how to use expression map? So I think we did the MIDI Learn already, but if you wanted to, I think I may have forgotten to do the expression map, so let me just open that up. So if you have an instrument that is, like many symphonic instruments, will allow you to have different articulations on particular instruments, and you could create you create an expression map to switch between, let's say, pizzicato and long and short notes. So, and what we could do is we could create these in an expression map setup. If it is a Hallian based instrument, Hallian can automatically create these by just when you go to like the MIDI track editor. So let's say we select the MIDI editor, the MIDI event here, and we'll say our note expression that we could automatically import these. So when we go to our expression map, so at this point we could just click on import key switches. So now, like when I look at my violin track, I could see all these different articulations. So if I wanted this violin to play back, and we could now select our articulations in our controller lane. So as we play back our different events here, our MIDI notes, and if I wanted to just solo the violin, we could switch to say, okay, I wanted these notes to be, we'll make it spiccato, and then back to legato. So we could do different key switches to play back different instruments. So as we listen to it, now it will switch to short notes. So that way, if your instrument supports multiple articulations and has multiple instruments all within one particular patch, where often you hold down a key switch or move a MIDI CC to switch between those articulations, you could just create that entirely inside of Cubase using and just handle it with the articulations ace. So we see, can the number of recent projects be increased more than 30? So I don't know of a way to do that. I could pass it on. I'm not sure if it's maybe like an OS issue that limits it, or if it's, a particular design intention. But I don't think it could be changed, but I'll pass it on. All right, so we just see from Ace Amadeus, I fixed an old TX802, Greg, or any Cubase users here. Can you recommend an affordable or free Windows 8 or 10 editor librarian? So I think the only thing that's going to be functioning still is maybe Midi Quest or SoundQuest. So check that out. But I don't think it's free. And I try to use it, and I personally didn't have good luck with it, but maybe others have. All right, so we see John Moore on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see, hey, Greg, is there a quantization option for the automation points? Like when I draw by mouse, they are often not where I wanted them to be on the bars when zoomed out. So let's take a look. Okay. Okay, so let's say if I'm drawing in automation, I'm on a grid here. So I'm going to just first make sure that I have snap turned on, just the letter J, and let's see if that automatically snaps. So if I just wanted to draw in automation points. Now let's see if I edit these particular points with snap on, then so it's not necessarily drawn because, but you can take with snap turned on, and I have this set to beat, that we could just move and have the automation point as you edit it automatically, snap directly to the value as you move it, just like that. So it's not necessarily quantizing it. And I think if we quantized automation, that, people would have philosophical, problems with it, like real kind of, very high-end mixer people that we have. So I think that this is a good compromise, so that, that you write the automation in accurately, but when you need to tweak it or edit it, that it will snap to the grid with the snap enabled by hitting the letter J. All right, so we just see a question. Can Cubase 12 save sysx sounds or patches? If yes, can you show us how to do it? Thanks. So sysx is really just recorded as MIDI data, but what you need to do in Cubase is to come over here to the preferences. And as we select the preferences, we'll say under MIDI filter, make sure that sysx is turned off. And then all you do is, arm a MIDI, put a MIDI track and record and do the sysx dump, and it'll be captured in Cubase for you. All right. According to Sable, I see that I am a goat. So, all right. And Gare says, and as such, we should change his name to Billy. So my brother's name is Bill. So. All right, so we see, does Cubase 12 have a vocal writer option, or can vocals be sidechained? So, vocals can be sidechained, but you also can just use a compressor, which is really kind of what the vocal writer is really doing. So, we see Cody saying, yeah, MIDI Quest was a tough librarian to tame. So, all right, so I think I had some questions that were mailed in, so let's get to those. All right, so I think our first question was my brain cramp moment from Tuesday's live stream was how to invert the pitches in real time from a MIDI controller. So this is as you play higher notes on a controller that the pitch is inverted downward. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. I'll show this for everyone's benefit. All right, so it is just I was kind of on the right track, but on Tuesday, but what we could do is just come up with so let's say I have, and I'm going to open up just a virtual keyboard so you can see the notes that I am actually playing. So I created a input transformer, and what we did is we said type is equal to notes, and then we say value 1 operation mirror, and then I just set it to like C3 or C4. So if you wanted to try, interesting stuff, so as I hit the notes here, and I'm going to hit a D, instead of going up in pitch, it goes down. So while we look at it kind of going upward to the right in pitch normally. So now if I take this off, so now it's just going to invert. So if you want to just kind of play your keyboard backwards, you could do that. Maybe you'll come up with some new interesting chord progressions that you wouldn't think of. But again, just go to your input transformer, and you want to put it on the track. You can do it globally. Open the panel, activate the module, and you can have up to 4 of these modules at once, and say type is equal to note. Value 1 operation mirror set to C3. All right, our next question. I've added an audio track and selected pop saxophone loop C# minor 17 from the loop browser. I then modified some of the notes in the loop using VariAudio. Now I would like to score the final modified selection. However, when I open the Scores tab, Open Score Editor is not available. Is it not possible to score MIDI loops? If so, please advise. So I'm assuming that this is an audio example. So I don't have this timed, but we'll just kind of play it to show you the process. All right, so if I wanted to, so we'll go to VariAudio, and at this point we'll just say, let's edit our VariAudio. Now what we need to do with VariAudio is to take this, and again, I don't have this timed rhythmically, so it's not going to look rhythmically correct, but just kind of show you the function. And we'll choose, under choose function, we'll just say extract MIDI. And then I'm going to put this onto a new MIDI track. Okay, that's going to get placed here. So select that, and then you can see the MIDI data in the score editor. If no MIDI track is selected, there's no score editor is available until something that the score editor can show is selected. So select the MIDI track that's been created through the extract MIDI, and then open the score editor, and then you'll be in good shape. All right, so a question. Hi, Greg. I have purchased a Steinberg electric bass guitar running in Howling 6. Can you please explain what the key switches stand for and discuss a quick overview of this bass? So let's take a look at it. And I'll just kind of loop a quick section here. And we'll solo this. All right, so when we want to open up the VST instrument, so when we go to the VST bass, this is an instrument that works inside of Halion Sonic SE, Halion Sonic, or Halion. And as we work with this, so, first thing is you can come over here and choose, different finishes if you wanted to. So if you want to be white or sunburst, blue, etc. Now, as we do this, we're going to have a volume control. We also have tone control. So if you wanted this to be brighter or just kind of rolling off the tone. Now, as we work with this, we could also have different pickups. So if we want it to be a jazz bass with both pickups, or like a precision bass where you have kind of dual single coil hum, or if you want it to be more of a humbucker, like a Music Man, we could also just say, okay, I want it all pickups, or I want it just the neck only, like in a jazz, or the bridge only. And then we could also have stereo. So if you want to be like a Rickenbacker, where you have two outputs on your bass. Now we have different key switches here. And here what we could do is we could switch these key switches between, like, if I wanted to be more sustain or slap. So we see these orange key switches. Or if you want it like with a pick or fingered, or let's say you want it to be muted, kind of like an old Motown thing. You could also just choose like harmonics, or if you want it artificial harmonics or natural harmonics. So, and there's going to be different players. And this could be like how the player is actually going up and down the neck. So, maybe if you want it to be, I don't want to have any open strings, or I want it like how a blues player may move up and down and select different notes on different parts, how a country player would do it, or maybe a funk player. Now, if we go to the little settings wheel here, we can set our pitch bend range, but we could also have like different, so if I activate like auto glide, if I like play two notes that are legato, like I play the second note before the first note comes, so I hit that note and I hit the second note, we could have it automatically kind of slide up. So we could do like, and we also have ghost notes. So if we wanted to come over here, let's say I was playing notes that were softer. So if I was doing like I played those little passing notes very softly. And you could set the value of the velocity directly for here. Now, something that I really like is if I was playing particular notes, let's say I was playing this G note, we have the green notes, and these will actually fix to a particular string. So if I only wanted to play this note on the E string, or if I wanted to play it on the A string, I could just come over here, or the D string. Oops, sorry, let me just, so I can take the same note that's on the A string, the D string, or the open G. So I could play different notes and then choose what string that actual note is coming from. And as we wanted to kind of expand this over, we have all sorts of different effects, amplifiers. So there's a lot of great stuff here. So as we would, just kind of play back, as we wanted to just kind of scroll over, say, okay, now I wanted to add a flanger. And we could add amplifiers, sections. So a whole kind of processing section. So Let's say, okay, I want to add an octaver on this. And if I wanted to have more of the DI and blend it with the amplifier signal, we can kind of just come over here and blend those. So an incredibly flexible instrument so that you could choose, different articulations, different playing choices of how people move up and down the neck, and also, what particular string a sample, is triggered from, because that makes a big difference as a bass player. So that's some of the stuff you could do with the electric bass. Okay. All right, so you see, hi Greg, I hope you are okay, and greetings from Liverpool. My question for the live stream, this is from George, is this: can we run simultaneously 2 different licenses? Let's say license A has Cubase, license B has Wavelab. In old days, we just plugged 2 dongles in same PC. How can we do that with the new licenses? So you could have it on one. In the previous days, you could have them on the same USB-E licenser. But now you could run each, Cubase and Wavelab with the latest versions. You could run on 3 different computers. So you could just have it installed on 2 different computers and go back and forth between them without having to worry about the licensing. So you just, in the Steinberg Activation Manager, you would just need to activate both computers, and then you could run the licenses on both computers at the same time. All right, so we see question. Hello, I was wondering if there are any demo Dolby Atmos projects for Cubase available. So we don't have any official ones. Sometimes projects are tricky to share because, copyright information. But I was looking online. I didn't see any. There are like 2 projects that we have available for Cubase 12, but I don't think that they're utilizing Dolby Atmos for that. So. All right. So we just see, hi, I would like to program marker positions in Midi remote. Everything works fine for markers. Question. Everything works fine for markers 1 to 9. For marker 10, for example, I can use a keyboard shortcut like M plus numpad 1 plus numpad 0. But can I program this into the Midi remote? Thanks in advance for your answer. So, what you can do, so the MIDI remote doesn't necessarily fire off keyboard shortcuts. It will, take a MIDI message and then transmit that. So what you can do with the MIDI remote is, if we wanted to just jump to okay, so let's say I want this particular knob to jump to, and I think there's a thing called to marker X. So at this point, we could just say, so you could obviously use N and B to go to the next marker, but when I come here, let's go to key commands, and we'll say transport, I think it's under, and we'll say to marker X. All right, so I'm going to apply the mapping there, and let's say I have a marker track with lots of markers on it. Okay, so now I hit this key, and we bring up a little window, and I could just now type in, okay, I want to go to marker 12. So we say to marker, 13. And then we could just immediately navigate to that particular marker. So, but there isn't a way in the MIDI remote to say, have this figure, fire off a number 1 and a number 0 in the MIDI remote, because it's not necessarily a MIDI message. But if you have a Stream Deck, you could program that to automatically go to particular markers and have the Stream Deck transmit like hitting 1 on your computer keyboard and numbers from your computer keyboard, but not in the MIDI remote. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. While using Melodyne 5 ARA extensions, is it possible to edit multiple tracks with the extension enabled simultaneously? I can't find a setting to do it. So I think that you can't edit multiple tracks, because you're going to be doing it in the sample editor. You might be able to do it within the part editor. So if we wanted to come over here, just jump back to here. So, if I have multiple parts selected here and we go into our editor, so I can have one of these kind of active, and then I could switch between them right here. So we can edit one at a time and switch. And if you wanted to see the other ones kind of underlying, there's options for that. But let's see if I come over here and if I switch these two parts, there's a part editor, but I don't think that's going to work with the extension, but I'll just give it a quick look. So I'm going to say events to part. And now that these are parts, we'll go to the inspector and let's add, let's say spectral layers here on this, and let's add spectral layers. And get to our extension, spectral layers. Yeah, so you're not going to be able to see kind of multiple tracks, I don't think, with the extension activated. All right, and we see another question. How to sync the chord track to a desired scale? Okay, so the chord track can be, it's not going to necessarily... It's not going to necessarily be limited to a particular scale. So, with the chord track, the concept is that, you could have the Midi scale assistant automatically kind of lock notes to scale, but the chord track, in case you wanted different passing tones and stuff like that, is not going to be locked to a particular scale. But what you could do is, if you go to the chord pads, there's presets here. So let's say if we go to our presets, so here we could just say, okay, I want this to be like major key of F. And now I could have these, and then we could drag these directly to the chord track. But we didn't want to necessarily, we wanted you to have an accidental if that's what you wanted to do. All right, we just had a question. Can you tell me what the small gray line is, the little vertical line? So as we come over here, we can see that this little line, and I'll just open up my lower zone here. And what this line represents is our kind of focus. So let's say if I'm here on my mixer, and I'll just add a number. And we could bank. So this is just kind of indicating exactly which particular channels are being controlled by your control surface. So if I click in here, we could have these 8 channels. If I click here, we could have this particular bank. And if I wanted to add a number of audio tracks, I'll just come over here. So if I select this track, we could see that we could just kind of move to, and that's indicating what particular tracks are being controlled by the control surface. All right, so we had a question. Is there a way to use Shift B command, jump to next marker with the arranger track? So if we have the arranger track open, so let's come over here. Let me just... So, once we have the arranger track, you could just use N and B, so you don't have to use Shift So once we are here, let me activate the project. So now we can just hit N and B. And that will take us to the next, so you don't have to hold down Shift. So if I'm here, so just regular N and B works. Okay, so you see, question, Cubase crashes after closing projects. What could be the main problem? So usually the main problem with on exiting is going to be a kind of a rogue problematic plugin that's not releasing its memory. So I bet that if you go through, if you use all Steinberg plugins, you could probably exit out of the project without problems. And it's probably going to be just one particular plugin that's not releasing its memory. Some people will close a project first before closing Cubase, and that seems to trigger a different sequence for the plugins. But 99% of the time, it's just a plugin that's just hanging in there, just waiting for something to happen. Okay, another question. When mixing a song with only VST instruments, is it necessary to use the compressor or similar for groove agent styles, kick drum or snare, or should the essentials already be set there? So if you have like a groove agent project, like let's say I'm playing, like a little pattern here, especially a lot of the particular, a lot of beat agent kits will be have processing on the sample stage. But when we go to like our master bus or kits, you may notice that a lot of them may have dynamics on them already. So a lot of times these are kind of intended to, like the groove agent kits often will be intended to where everything is kind of processed internally. So you just turn it on, hit play, and it sounds great. You can do more processing, dynamics processing to suit your taste. But whatever, but a lot of times the processing is already present. So you may not, you don't have to automatically do it. So. All right, so just see a question. The other night I created a studio drummer track. I dragged one bar into Cubase and duplicated it 7 bars and added a 1 bar fill. So I had a nice 8 bar drum going on. Then I'm duplicating 8 bars as many times as it took to accomplish about 6 minutes. Okay, I then created an instrument guitar track to play against a drum. So I played and ended by saving the project. Last night I went to open up the project and found that whatever the 8th bar was, the fill bar, there was no sound. It was blank visually too. Did I do something wrong? Should I have glued the drum track together? So it shouldn't matter. So let's say I have on this, I'm going to take this and let's just duplicate it a bunch of times and I'll throw a fill in. And then I will duplicate this. So, what could have happened sometimes if you're recording a guitar part, maybe like as you recorded, maybe it was accidentally recorded over. But you shouldn't have to. So we should have our fill coming up here. So if I save the project, so we'll save this, I'll close the project and open the project again, that our fill should be there. So I'm not sure if it was Groove Agent or says play right before the fill. This should be our fill there. So it seems like everything's kind of worked. So maybe it got accidentally deleted, something like that, or recorded over. But it seems like everything's kind of working as expected there. All right, so we had a question. Is there any way to process audio events with DOP with automation? Is that possible at all? So we can think of the direct offline processing as being more of a static process. And if you wanted automation, simply do a render in place. And I think we covered that maybe in the last live stream as well. All right. Okay, so I think we are done with those particular questions. Let's jump back. I know we have just a minute or two left, so we're just about out of time. So I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. If you've learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a positive comment. All this stuff is appreciated. And, we'll see everyone back on Tuesday. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. Please stay safe and healthy. And we'll see you back on Tuesday. Thank you very much. Goodbye.